We are currently undertaking the initial assessments, but I will tell you that yesterday we were able to uh, facilitate a reconnaissance flight, and what we are seeing is a lot of damage, primarily to the agricultural sector. And you would imagine from the air you would be able to capture these very easily. However, from our district committees and the other sectors, we are hearing that flooding was a major issue. We got reports of flooding in almost all of the districts in St. Lucia. In some community or the other, you had flooding incidents. On Wednesday night, we had up to 133 people in shelters. That is in the shelters that were opened through the district disaster committees, but I'm aware that there were persons who sheltered the storm with family and friends. We also got reports of considerable debris, which was another issue that we were concerned with. We had to clean those in many areas. And of course, I know people spoke of power outages, but I'm happy to report that Lucia did assure us that by yesterday, 10 p.m., there would be power to 98% of St. Lucia, which is very good. We had some issues with Wasco and water distribution. We know the impact of flooding on the water infrastructure in terms of turbidity and the need to close down or shut down in some areas. But Wasco is working very, very hard to make sure that the water is restored. I know that they have a plan B in case that some areas that do not go up as fast as they would like it to. But I'm confident that very soon that would be rectified as well. So generally, we're seeing that the impact seemed to be hardest on the agricultural sector.
You mentioned flooding. Were there clearly communities that were more severely affected than others?
We had flooding in Grosile, in Castries, Bexar, of course. I think nobody's surprised that we had the level of flooding we saw in Bexar. Denry also recorded flooding, and in dialogue with the Met Office on the evening, we expected that because of the amount of rainfall that they were recording at the Erad station. We had Labrie in the Labrie village around the police station. There was flooding as well. Margaretut in Miku, right over that bridge. The bridge overflowed its banks, and so Margaretut was an issue. And we also had flooding in Choiseul and in Vieux-Fort, Bruceville in Vieux-Fort.
In terms of the infrastructure, were there any bridges damaged?
No bridges were damaged. We did not have major physical infrastructural damage, so our roads seem to have held. The bridge is held. It was pretty much a lot of debris in most areas. With respect to landslides as well, we did not see mass landslides or very big landslides. We saw landslides concentrated in a couple of areas, but the Ministry of Infrastructure were able to deal with this very, very quickly.
In terms of homes damaged, what were the reports concerning roofs and house damage?
That is the assessment that is actually being conducted at this time. You would appreciate that it takes a little more time to go in depth into the communities to do this sort of more detailed assessment, because we also capture data on how many children were in these homes, the social type of data that we need. What did you lose? So it's a little more detailed, but we're working very closely with the Red Cross, because the Red Cross is also capturing that kind of data, and so we anticipate that by Monday, we would have a fairly accurate database of what happened in terms of at the household level. Vieux-Fort South is one of the areas that have completed that type of assessment, but we would want to have it for the entire island. Grosile also has sent their report, I must say, but we would want to collate that for the entire island and then to have a fairer picture of what happened in terms of impact on households.
What preliminary information can you share with us concerning public facilities, hospitals, and so on?
On the Wednesday evening, the Soufrière Hospital had to be relocated to the Environmental Health Building, but that was already in motion. That was the plan B because of the vulnerability of the location of the Soufrière Hospital. By the next day, that operations returned to the hospital. We saw St. Jude's. We had some minor issues at St. Jude's, but the other centers held up very well. What the health sector is saying to us is that right now they're looking at assessing the roof of the building that houses the St. Jude's Hospital, as well as the Castries and Grosile health facilities. So no major damage in the health sector either.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about damage to the agriculture. We imagine it basically to be mainly bananas that would be destroyed. Is it too early to say roughly what percentage?
I cannot give you the percentage at this time. I am sure by early next week we would have that indication from the Ministry of Agriculture and the other agricultural entities that we have on island. I'm sure that they would come together and we can receive that official figure from them. With respect to tourism, there seem to have been no significant impact on the tourism sector, and we're really happy to note that.
So there wasn't much damage from the sea?
There wasn't much damage from the sea.
Okay, because we know normally coastal communities sometimes ancillary then rain.
It was pretty much rainfall, lots of rainfall and flooding from rainfall.
Okay, in terms of the forest areas, I don't know if there was any, I know you did the flyover, and obviously we saw the bananas damaged, but were there significant areas in terms of forest trees falling?
I am told by the head of our National Damage Assessment and Needs Analysis team, that's Mr. Chamberlain, that from flying over, you could not see massive scars in the landscape suggesting landslides. I also spoke to the Deputy Chief Forestry Officer, and he said that they were doing their assessments. That is ongoing. But the preliminary shows that there was not significant impact on the forestry stock. So that again is good news.
The people who are at the shelters, were they there because there was some immediate threat to their homes, or they were just being taking precaution?
In some areas we saw taking precaution, and in some areas we saw threats to the home. So we had both situations. In a place like Bruceville in Vieux Fort, where the flooding had started, you saw persons moving in because they were already experiencing flooding. In a place like Ancillary, I'm told that it was pretty much a precautionary measure, that they moved into that shelter, and by the next day, once the water had subsided, they were back to their homes. I think it shows that people are heeding messages that they need to be prepared, and that they are making sure that personal safety comes first. So they wanted to make sure that we're out of danger and that we can return safely to our homes once the event is over.
That was leading to my last question. In terms of the interaction with your emergency disaster committees around the island, what were you most impressed about, and what are the areas that we need to work on? I guess this was some sort of a dry run.
I'm happy to note. I realized that persons were taking the messages seriously. I drove into town I was actually going to GIS, and I realized that persons were shopping, persons were filling up their tanks, albeit a bit late, but persons were still doing the things that was needed to be done, the things that were needed to be done. So we're happy for that. What we saw, however, was a lot of misinformation being circulated through various medium. And so we advise people, the official message is from Nemo, the official message is from the Met Office, and so they need to look out for that and listen for that. We saw messages of saying that we have a state of emergency. Nemo cannot issue a state of emergency. So if you see that, you know immediately that this is not correct, and so you should not share that message. But I don't think persons were really taking time out to analyze the messages that were coming through. Perhaps in good faith, they were just trying to share the message around. But we need to find a way to verify that the messages that we're receiving, that they're authentic before we share. I also note that there were instances where messages were coming from other Nemos, as I would say. So you have a Nemo St. Vincent, you have a Nemo Belize, and we have to be careful that we are heeding to the messages from Nemo St. Lucia before we share, because it can cause some panic. My phone was going from 4 a.m. Into 10, 11, 12. People are asking questions. Is this correct? Is this correct? Is this correct? So we need to find a way to be able to just make sure that we always get the correct information.
I suppose Nemo too will find a way to make to be more proactive, to take greater opportunities with social media. I know sometimes social media is not the medium we use most, but is Nemo thinking now of making greater use of social media?
Social media has a huge following, and I think personally that we should use all mediums available, because you want to reach as many people as you can with the messages. So of course we will have other forms of, we will be using all forms of communication that is available to us to reach our audiences.